melting of the glaciers. And I point this out, and might take a small exception because the billionaires and the obsession with profit is not just the root cause. There are other causes, and I would say the food industry, especially in the United States. I would recommend a book called Fast Food Nation by Eric Schlosser that talks about how we torture our animals before we eat them. They spend their entire lives knee-deep in their own waste. And I am just so embarrassed when I see Al Gore, who looks like he's 9 months pregnant, lecturing an Indian politician about how you should not build more coal-powered power plants, and the poor Indian just has to sit there with his mouth shut and remain humble, which is so typical of Indians, and say, yes, but if you would just stop eating meat, that would do so much more. So there is this deep pathology based partly on our economic system, but especially on meat production. And for what industry? For what benefit? And again, these terrible numbers about global climate change and global warming, which are continued here. But again, I would add that the worst impact of human activity on the environment is the mass production of meat. So if possible, reduce your consumption, especially of beef and pork, especially if you come to the United States. And the largest source of antibiotic-resistant bacteria is not over-prescribing antibiotics, which is bad, but it is mass-produced meat. Also, I would recommend Luigi and Fritjof Capper's book that describes brilliantly the concept of contingency. And one part of the Bible that might be true should we fail in reversing global climate change is, yes, the meek may inherit the earth. The meek-lipped jellyfish are doing quite well, and Mother Earth and Gaia would do quite well without us. So what is important in ecology is sustainability, and we've heard some brilliant lectures on that already. And again, I recommend the books by Luigi and Fritjof Capra. And also important in this is eco-literacy, the interdependence. Life evolves through cooperation, not competition. And the pattern of life is networks, sustainability, potential. And also there is a deep ecology where humans are one of many. If you look up on the internet, it will say equal, because I had a very different feeling when my son was born and I held him in my arms compared to when I held my lovely little kitten in my arms. I just say important. I don't want to necessarily say that that the animals are equal to us. But still, please, if possible, don't eat meat. Then there's also a deep ecology in the human body that is only about 0.1% of the DNA in our body comes from what we call human cells. The vast majority comes from the bacteria in our gut and also the fungus that is in our mouth that helps provide a protective layer. So all forms of life within us are important. Also, I would point out in systems thinking that today's solutions come from yesterday's problems sometimes, and also yesterday's problems can bring today's solutions. Also, one of the previous talks briefly mentioned the CRISPR technology, which is a gene editing technology that can cut or remove a piece of a gene and produce viruses that can destroy cancer. They're called oncolytic viruses. The same technology can create new organisms like bacteria that can consume pollutants. But the same technology might be able to use to create so-called superhumans with blonde hair and blue eyes, or whatever one might want to consider to be human. So we must include philosophy in the human element. Also, something maybe for discussion later is there is an active research program to eliminate all mosquitoes from the biosphere, because mosquitoes are the deadliest animals from a human perspective. They've killed more humans than even we have killed in all of our wars. But there's a gene drive technology that can spread these genes throughout the environment. So again, today's solutions could create tomorrow's problems if we're not careful. Then there is total quality management, which tells us that all employees are important. Before total quality management, in industry, a person working in the union was told, you're being paid to work, you're not being paid to think. If you think there's a problem with production, the problem is you. The engineer will decide if there's a problem. And so the motto was, don't fix the problem, fix the blame. If you work for Fiat, the competition was not Chevrolet or Ford. The competition was the person just across the hall. So if you are afraid of losing your job, you keep your mouth shut if you make a mistake. After total quality management, however, the people in the union were told, you will not lose your job unless you stay quiet. If you make a mistake, speak up, immediately stop production, and we will train others not to make the same mistake. Total quality management is very natural. It is our natural body's way of doing things. For example, if I am walking and don't pay attention, I stubbed my toe. I do not poke myself in the eye. I do not kick myself in the cerebral cortex. My body does whatever it takes to heal that toe. And the part of my body, the cerebral cortex, that forgot to pay attention is the one part of the body most capable of fixing the problem. So total quality management in medicine, or total quality medicine, all members of the community are important. My mother, who was trained as a nurse, was taught never contradict the doctor. Now nurses are looked at as equal members of the team. And most important are the patients and the caregivers, and you listen to their voice. One thing, if you ever work in industry, they'll sometimes call this total quality manufacturing. Of course, we are not machines, so it's better to call it total quality making with humans. Also, there is P4 medicine, which is used to predict your susceptibility to a disease. So when doing clinical trials of a new drug that might target a particular therapeutic protein coded by a particular gene, you make sure everybody in that study has that particular gene. And it is preventive. Prevention is key in modern systematic medicine. And it is personalized, because what might be good for me might not be good for you. What might be good for me before I have cancer could become deadly for me after I have cancer. A good example of that is resveratrol, which is in red wine. You can take a dietary supplement called resveratrol. And it is also participatory, where the patient and their caregiver participate in their own care. But there are limits, and those limits are best exemplified by the pioneer of systems medicine, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who created palliative medicine. And I would add that in many ways I owe my sanity to her, because her and her millions of disciples, one of whom was an angel named Grace, who came into my life and helped save my sanity during hospice care. So prevention, happiness, positive attitude, meditation, prayer, being connected, and belly breathing are so important. Your whole diet is important. Unfortunately, there's a misogynistic superfood cult that tries to shame women that might be slightly obese and say, this is a superfood, this is a fat burner. If you just add this to your diet, you'll lose weight. Well, to my way of thinking, you lose weight by eating less, not by eating more. An example of a so-called superfood is cinnamon. Okay, but if you put cinnamon in a sweet roll with a lot of sugar and a lot of fat, it is no longer healthy. The only true superfood is mother's breast milk. So avoid red meats, and CAFOs are concentrated animal feed organizations in the United States where they torture animals throughout their lives. And when you eat meat in the United States that is produced by these, you are eating fecal material. The undocumented workers that work in the slaughterhouses, according to the book Fast Food Nation, all of them are missing at least one digit. Where do you think that goes? So there are many benefits to a plant-based diet. Also, multivitamins with a question mark. I strongly recommend to all men over 50 Do not take multivitamins that have iron. To everybody, I recommend do not eat red meat. Iron is especially deadly to men. For an example, I have not taken multivitamins that have iron for, I think, 20 years. I don't eat red meat. But every year, my iron content is just fine in my blood tests. I am not anemic. The iron bioaccumulates because, of course, men don't menstruate. So one reason why women tend to outlive men is because we tend to eat red meat and take vitamins that have iron in them. And in personalized medicine, you want to reduce the burden of disease and move from illness to wellness and from treating the disease to maintaining health. And I'll let you read this, because it can help reduce our healthcare costs and reduce human suffering. And again, with prescription drugs and dietary supplements, there are huge differences in how they are developed and marketed. So I would encourage you to read my book. I should also add that I gave my book to one of the students. It is available over the internet. And again, some dietary supplements are adulterated and proprietary, but most are not. And one of the things you might notice in my book is a list of over 300 poisons that we look for in the FDA that can be found in some dietary supplements. But I especially recommend the book Life Lessons by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross and David Kessler, because so many of our lessons we don't really learn until the final days of our life. And these are the chapters of the book and the different life lessons. So, in conclusion, systems thinking is essential, and life is an emergent property. And we use a systems view of life, and there is a deep ecology in the human body, and total quality medicine, total quality management is quite natural. And P4 medicine is really important, as are life lessons. And here are some examples of further reading. And I must apologize, in my abstract, I listed a couple of books. I let my ego get carried away with me that have nothing to do with systems medicine. One of them is a very old book on ion chromatography that has nothing to do with systems medicine. And I must point out that one of my books on pomegranates received a very bad review. And I hope all of you that are interested in this stay in touch with me. And I would like to finish by emphasizing the importance of please do not eat meat. And only love can conquer hate. Love the sinner, but hate the sin. And let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with us.